14, which is to remove shorter strings, we want to write a method named removeShorterStrings, and it takes an array list of string as parameter. It removes from each successive pair of values the shorter string in the pair. We're given an example of that right here, so read through that if you don't understand it. And then there's some criteria down here that we're gonna have to pay attention to, but let's get with the basics here. Now there's two ways to do this. I'm gonna make two videos on this. This is gonna be the first one. This is the way I prefer and I think is best, but it's super important to understand the second way that you can do this. And it's a little bit simpler to understand, but this one is better to do. So let's start this out. The first thing that we're going to do is we know we have to run through this array to look at all the elements, right? That is going to take a for loop. Now, in this for loop, we have to do our check. We have to do an if or an else. So if this one is bigger or this one is bigger, or there's a case when they are the same, but we'll go over that in a second. Now, since we are using the same array list, and we are essentially dividing it by 2, and we have the criteria that if there's an odd number of strings in our list, the final value should be kept in the list. Since we have these criterias, what we're going to want to do is divide our list length by 2 to store in our final result. So we're going to say int length is equal to list.size divided by 2. So this is going to give us our new size. And inside of our for loop, I'm going to do int a is equal to 1 and run this as long as a is less than our length and a plus plus. You don't want to do the whole list.size divided by 2 inside of here, because if you do that, the actual list size, since you're removing things, it's going to be constantly changing. So you want it to be done like this. Now, another thing, why do we start at 1 here? Typically I start at 0. Well, we start at 1 because we want to look at this value, then this value. We want to look at the uppermost value, that way we don't have an array out of bounds. So that's just something that I do, something important to note. There could be another way of doing this, but I think this is the best way to do it. Now inside of here we have our comparison. So we need to do our if statement. We're going to say if, and we want to essentially compare, let's just look at the 0th and the first index. This one and this one. Now there's two, or actually 3 criterias. If this one is bigger, if this one is bigger, or if they have the same length. Now, in this if statement, we want the least complex thing because everything else can be handled in just an else statement. So we can say if, and if we look down here, if there is a tie, meaning both strings are the same length, our method should remove the first string in the pair. So that means if this one is smaller, or if they're the same length, this should be removed. So we only really need to check if this one is bigger, otherwise we'll just remove the first one entirely. So let's do that. Let's check if the first one is bigger. That is going to be this index. So we are going to do list.get, get the smaller one, which is going to be a minus 1, that's giving us the 0 index. If the length of the string here is less than the list.get of our current index dot length, then we are just going to want to do a list.remove where we pass in our a, because we want to remove it. And actually I did this wrong, sorry, it should be like this. So if this second one, because we're removing the smaller one, right? We're removing the smaller one, so if the second one is smaller, we remove it here. Otherwise, we are just going to do a list.remove, we pass in our a minus 1. And that way, what we're doing is we're covering our bases if this is smaller or if they're equal. And that's pretty much all you need to know for this variation of how we're doing the problem. We can press submit, see if we passed our tests. And we haven't passed all of our tests yet. So let's see what could be the case. We have our length here. It looks like we still have this last one right here. So that's not good. Let's take a look at this. We have our length as the size divided by 2. A is equal to 1, less than length. We have get right here. We have our list.remove a, and then we have our else, which is also our list minus 1. So let's see. If we look at these two worked well. And if we look at this one, we can see that this the is still in here for some reason when it shouldn't be. This right here is in here when it shouldn't be. So there's something interesting happening here. Now let's see, we have our header looks good. In length is the size divided by 2. That's going to be okay. We start a is equal to 1, and here's the problem. We want to run a for the entire length because let's say if we have 6 things in here, like how we do like this. Well, 6 divided by 2 is 3, right? So length is 3, and we're running it as long as it's less than 3. Well, we're going to do 1, 2. We're only checking 2 cases, not 3. So this needs to be equal to. And that should solve our problem. So we'll run our tests again. And that does solve our problem. That passed our tests. So if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. If you want to see the other way to do it, it'll be in the playlist link below the like button. It has to do with the second array list.